I used to be a school teacher, but I soon realised there was something about the job that wasn't quite sitting right with me, and I couldn't put my finger on it. And then one day, I realised what it was. I couldn't stand children. So I just quit. Now, I happen to think that teaching is one of the very best things that anyone can do with their lives. It's just not for me, but I do have the utmost respect for anyone who does it, and I've remained friends with a lot of teachers. And this has meant that I've been able to keep up to date on the developments within the profession. My friends often send me messages about the way in which activist ideas are being drip-fed into the curriculum or to pastoral policies. These messages are usually caveated with the phrase, "Don't tell anyone," and they invariably come through WhatsApp because it's encrypted, which gives you some sense of how terrified these teachers are at raising concerns about this stuff. They're being forced to behave like spies. And they're right to be concerned. Some of the screenshots they send me are pretty alarming. Sometimes these are documents which tell them which topics to include in tutor meetings or lessons. Sometimes they've taken a sneaky photo of what's been shown on the projector screen during training sessions. And then again, it's the same ideological concepts cropping up. White privilege, gender identity, toxic masculinity, heteronormativity, all of these interconnected belief systems that you'll find in the new religion of what we call critical social justice, or the woke movement. When I interviewed the Reverend Dr. Bernard Randall on this very programme, who is a school chaplain at Trent College in Derbyshire, he told me about training sessions in which staff were instructed to chant "smash heteronormativity." And when he delivered a sermon about the importance of respectfully challenging such ideological viewpoints, he was reported to prevent the government's anti-terrorism programme. Here are some examples of teaching resources that were issued at a school in Richmond. How do I explain white privilege? The danger of saying my child isn't racist. Well, children aren't racist. If they express racist views, it's because they've picked them up from, well, usually from terrible parents. But this idea that whiteness is a kind of original sin is an inherent aspect of this new religion. You'll remember we recently covered the story of the Labour-run Islington Council, who ran a poster campaign that claimed that even babies can be racist. Why? Because they apparently are more responsive to faces that have the same skin colour as their caregivers. Yes, because they're looking for their mother. They're not being racist. What a ridiculous suggestion. And the Welsh Labour government signed up to a programme to decolonise the nursery. Nottingham City Council did this as well. Here's a tip to councillors. You don't need to decolonise a nursery, because it's a nursery. And as far as I'm aware, toddlers have never colonised anything. They can't even use cutlery, let alone go running off to invade and pillage foreign lands. But this hasn't stopped parents from buying copies of Anti-Racist Baby by Ibram X. Kendi for their kids. You can see from this image here how this baby is delighted to be reading about how institutional power structures reinforce racial hierarchies in society. And after that, it'll be time for Peppa Pig. Although that could be problematic as well, ever since the London Fire Brigade accused Peppa Pig of indulging in out-of-date stereotypical gender-specific wording. Believe me, there is nothing that these people won't problematise. Some of the teachers who contact me on a regular basis are also concerned about unconscious bias training sessions. Not that they think they don't have any unconscious biases, we all do. But studies have conclusively and repeatedly shown that unconscious bias training achieves nothing at all. It's a waste of time. And besides, it's totally illiberal for employers to try and probe the secret thoughts of their staff. So why don't my teacher friends say, no, I'm not doing this. I'm not going to teach boys that they are inherently toxic, or white kids that they are inherently complicit in racism, or girls or ethnic minority children that they will always be oppressed, or that there are a million genders, or that biological sex is unimportant, or that if a boy likes to wear dresses, he's actually a girl, or if a girl likes to play football, she's actually a boy. Why don't these teachers refuse to go along to sessions by visiting experts who berate them for their white privilege, or say they need to uncover their unconscious biases and re-educate themselves? I've yet to meet a teacher who doesn't think all of this is absurd, but I've also yet to meet a teacher who has said to their management team, enough is enough, I'm not doing it. And in truth, it's because they're too scared, and understandably so. There's a general silence on these issues because those in authority have completely bought into it. And why would you jeopardise your job prospects by rocking the boat? The National Education Union, the largest teaching union in the UK, has pretty much morphed into an activist body at this point. It has claimed that there is an urgent need to decolonise every subject and every stage of the school curricula. In a recent report, the union called for activist training for teachers. That's the last thing we need. And in today's Sunday Times, there is this story about parents of pupils at what was formerly Haberdashers' Aske's Hatcham College, but which recently dropped the name of the school's 17th century benefactor, Robert Aske, because of his links to the slave trade. Now, these parents are battling to be able to see the lesson plans of teachers who they believe are prioritising activism over education. They fear that their children are being indoctrinated. And they're probably right. Former Labour Education Secretary Baroness Morris of Yardley has tabled an amendment to the schools bill in the House of Lords in the hope of enabling parents to have the right to see teaching materials. Well, let's hope she succeeds. And let's hope that parents and teachers start being a little more proactive and courageous when it comes to standing up against the ideological takeover of our schools. It won't be easy, but the law is on their side. Section 406 of the Education Act 1996 prohibits the promotion of partisan political views in the teaching of any subject. The government has made it clear that this applies to critical race theory, which is why activists have started adopting the core tenets of critical race theory without actually using the phrase critical race theory. It's a neat trick. So come on, teachers, don't just sit there in those tedious training sessions listening to some overpaid know-nothing preaching to you about their precious belief system and why your pupils need to conform. Stand up and challenge them. Ask them for evidence of their claims. Ask them to consider other points of view. You got into this job to broaden the minds of the young, not shut them down. And although it might be tough, when sufficient numbers speak out, this tide will turn. And ultimately, your pupils will be the ones that benefit. Always remember that indoctrination isn't education. It's the opposite. So let's drive this nonsense out of our schools.